Starting your own RIA? Betterment Advisor Solutions is the modern custodian built to support you from day one. With intuitive tech, portfolio management, and streamlined client onboarding, we make it easy to launch with confidence. Learn more at betterment.com/advisors. That's betterment.com/advisors. Grow your RIA your way. Investing involves risk, performance not guaranteed. Welcome to the WealthStack podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, the director of WealthStack Content Solutions. And today we're diving into one of the most emotional and often overlooked aspects of holistic wealth planning, later in life and elder care. So I have the pleasure of being joined by Lauren Clough, the co-founder and CEO of bQuest, a platform helping advisors support clients as they navigate aging, caregiving, and really everything in between. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Shannon. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, me too. And I know bQuest is a newer business. It's an emerging technology platform helping advisors, but we'll get into that in a second. I do actually want to start with your background, and I promise this will actually be the hardest question that you get this entire conversation, because I want to know what makes Lauren, both professionally and personally.
Well, it feels like we might have a therapy session here, but, oftentimes it goes back to how one was raised. And so we won't spend the whole time talking about that. But essentially, I grew up in a small farming community in Illinois, and I grew up around my family business. So my grandparents started our family business in 1960, and there's a reason I'm sharing this. But really grew up around the business. Back then, it was small, and now we're the largest redistributor in the food industry in North America. So that has really shaped a lot as well. I worked for the business for 13 years. And so essentially working in supply chain management, we learned to look at really complex networks or systems, to look at, fragmented situations, and then to be able to advise on how we can create efficiencies and streamline those networks. So some really good opportunities to become curious, to, collaborate with partners. And so I learned a lot from that experience. Additionally, my grandpa, who started the business, battled Alzheimer's, and he passed away in 2006 from battling Alzheimer's. My dad's generation now is dealing with some of the same. And so it's a little bit of this, colliding experience of both my career, where I spent the majority of my career, as well as this personal experience that I have observed as multiple generations of our family has dealt with Alzheimer's. So it really, both of those experiences are what led me to kind of create our vision for the business. I have a co-founder, Kelly Baird, who is our COO. And so between the two of us and our personal experiences, essentially that is what has led to the concept around bQuest.
It's always interesting because some of the best entrepreneurs, it obviously their business stems from having that very kind of deep rooted personal experience. So thank you for being candid and just sharing that to give context. So for listeners that are maybe not as familiar with bQuest, give us the pitch. Who do you serve? Where do you sit in the ecosystem? And really the story about how this all came to life.
Yeah, essentially we have three key stakeholders, right? Our North Star are family caregivers. And it could be a spouse supporting an aging loved one. It could be like myself, an adult child that is part of the sandwich generation that is caring about, aging parents, right? It could be like my business partner, Kelly, who is supporting her 99-year-old grandma. So that is really our North Star. That is who we are looking to really support through this challenging experience that we call life and loss. But second to that is really service providers. So when we think about this journey of life and loss, it is complex and there are many needs along the way. And so when we think about experts in the field that can provide hands-on care for these family caregivers, it's really 20 different types of professionals. It could be home care providers. It could be death doulas. It could be senior placement agents. It could be estate planning attorneys. It could be after loss professionals. So it's this community that is really today presented in a very fragmented way that family caregivers need to tap into in order to provide much needed hands-on support. And then third is really our financial partners. So when we think about who can we partner with to really bring this support to family caregivers, which are ultimately their clients, it's really financial partners stood out to us as the best, organization and industry to collaborate with.
Because I would say bQuest isn't just a piece of technology. I'd be so bold to say that it's really a connector, because you've built a platform that lets advisors provide that real practical help to clients facing these elder care decisions. How were you ultimately able to identify this gap in the advisor toolkit?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We think about our technology as really that conduit. It allows us to provide a really seamless experience for family caregivers that need to connect with these service providers. So that's really it. But essentially, we have viewed financial advisors as being a critical service provider, if you will, to these families as they're navigating these experiences. So when we built this ecosystem of aging care and end of life and after loss service providers, financial advisors were part of that community. And so we've had over 2 years of experience in talking to them and asking questions and really getting to the root of how they support their clients. And what we heard time and time again, Shannon, was that clients are coming to us, the financial advisor, as the most trusted advisor, asking questions and looking for connections to service providers through this experience of aging and end of life. And then I would say, and what types of answers do you have? And they would often say, well, I haven't been through the experience personally, so I honestly don't know how to respond. And I don't really feel comfortable leaning into the conversation because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So typically we move past it to something I feel more comfortable talking about, right? And they recognize that's not always the best service for their client. And lastly, I would ask them, but when they do ask you for a solution or connection to service providers, what solution do you have to offer them? And they basically said, we really don't have anything that is effective and efficient for us to provide. And so that was really kind of the light bulb moment of, okay, this is happening. I haven't met one advisor that says, no, these questions aren't coming up. And so we know it's happening, but we know that the advisors are typically spending lots of time trying to find a solution, trying to find answers. And so it's not really ideal for them, and it's not really ideal for their clients either.
Well, it's an interesting shift that we're seeing, right, in the advisor community as folks demand that Netflix or Amazon experience of making sure that it's truly holistic. And now with the advent of things like AI, this seems like an area where advisors can truly showcase their value. So I appreciate you giving just that background and context of the challenge that folks are facing when it comes to later in life care. So Lauren, I want to dive into our first segment that I call Stats All Folks, because I came across a recent Merrill Lynch study that showed that 7 in 10 advisors say that they are fielding more questions about aging, elder care, and long-term support more so than ever before. Why do you think this is becoming such a critical component of the whole, client advisor relationship?
Yeah, it's I think it's a number of factors really happening at once, right? So we all know that our population is aging, right? And so the stat, there are a number of stats, but this one's impactful, that there are 12,000 people that are turning 65 every single day. Every single day. So just this year, that's going to be 4.4 million people that turn 65, right? And this is going to happen for the next couple of years. So we know that the population is shifting. So these questions are going to continue coming up, and these things are top of mind for adults that are caring for their loved ones. So that's number one. Number two is that something that we learned is that financial advisors are doing some really good long-term care planning with their clients already, right? So that is happening today. They're having these conversations. I do think that they can go deeper if they're supported with resources and solutions, but that's happening today. We also know that down the path, down the journey, financial advisors are helping families upon the death of a loved one with estate administration, right? So that's really great work as well. But what's missing is really what I call the messy middle, right? So it's in between planning for long-term care and a death that is really aging in place, right? It's home transition support, right? It's end of life care. And so families are coming to their advisors asking for support because that is really when they need support. And they think about their advisor as their most trusted advisor, yet there aren't really any solutions today to provide the support that these clients are seeking.
Because it's interesting because we talk so much about building a financial plan, but when an aging crisis hits, many families are still unfortunately very unprepared. So what advice would you give and how can advisors just be more proactive without becoming social workers or, elder law attorneys, to be proactive around situations like this?
No, Shannon, I think that's a really good point, right? Because I think part of the challenge in the industry has been that advisors really want to lean in to these conversations, yet they're a little nervous, right? Not knowing, well, where's that going to go? I don't want to be a therapist. I'm not a social worker. And if I don't have an effective solution for my client, then I'm going to have nothing, right? So they're kind of nervous leaning into it for those reasons. So this is really why we've created our program for financial firms in particular. It's really two sides. One is care coordination, right? Because now when financial advisors lean into these conversations, they actually have solutions to provide, including connections to vetted service providers that can then pass the baton to. So again, what financial advisors want to do is they want to lean into these conversations and they want to have a turnkey solution to provide to their clients. In addition to that, they want more education, but they don't want to become the experts, right? And so that's something that we're really cognizant of is like, how do we provide advisors and client service teams with education so that they feel confident engaging in these conversations with their clients, but it's not overwhelming to the point where they're like, it's too much and I don't want to be the expert.
Well, it's interesting because you have this camp of people that would probably argue that advisors should just, stay in their lane, do what they're good at in the financial planning. But what we're seeing now is that clients want their advisor to, like you said, truly be that quarterback for them. So what does it mean for an advisor to have a care network, and how does bQuest help them build one?
Yeah, it's really important because again, it comes back to these experiences that we know we as humans are going to navigate at some point in our life if we aren't already. And so the way that we describe that journey of life and loss is it's starting with aging in place. So we know that 90% of Americans would say that they want to stay in their homes, aging as long as possible. So we think about what are the resources and service providers that are best suited for that desire, right? Then we know that at some point they will likely have to think about a home transition, whether that's downsizing or whether that's looking in senior living. And so again, that's a new experience that they need support, service providers and resources. Moving down the path is end of life, same thing, and then a death and estate administration. So if you think about this journey, there are a lot of needs that families have. And so for the financial advisor to think about, okay, if I have to build this network on my own, that is a massive lift, right? I don't know who these service providers are. I don't know how to vet them properly. I don't know how to find them, what questions to ask. It's a lot. And so yet their clients are asking them for connections to these types of professionals, right? And so what we've done is we've essentially taken that off their shoulders to say, okay, we're going to identify these 20 plus different types of service providers that are best suited for clients through these experiences. We are going to select the best of the best throughout the country. We have created a 4-step proprietary vetting process where essentially we're looking at qualitative, quantitative, background checks so that when a financial advisor gets the request from their client, say Mrs. Smith is saying, I need more support in home because I can't keep taking care of Bob the way I have been. And then the financial advisor can tap into our bQuest network through our digital platform and be able to make a one-on-one referral directly to their client, to Mrs. Smith. So again, they're providing this solution, but it's a really turnkey way. And it's very easy for the advisor, and it's very effective for the client.
And I'm curious because you've mentioned it a couple of times around having 20 plus kind of identifiers around these solution providers. How did you go about that process? And, why is it those 20 that seem to be hitting the mark? And are you planning on expanding that in any capacity?
Absolutely. So Kelly and I have built bQuest through a family caregiver's lens, right? So Kelly and I have both navigated these experiences ourselves. And so we've really built this ecosystem through firsthand experience. And so again, looking at those predominant experiences, identifying those critical service providers. And so we started there. Now that's the foundation, right? 20 plus, it sounds pretty large, and it is. But there are certainly additional types of service providers that are going to be valuable for families as they navigate these experiences. In addition to that, there's some really great pieces of technology, right? Specifically for aging in place that we want to showcase on the platform. There are products that families need as they're, navigating these transitions that we also want to be able to spotlight on the platform. So yes, it is absolutely evolving as we kind of figure out how to build the foundation and then how to continue layering on professional service providers or products that are really helpful for families navigating these experiences.
And look, we know that wealth doesn't exist in a vacuum. Aging touches everything from estate planning to liquidity, real estate, family dynamics. So how are you seeing the most forward-thinking firms bake all of this into their planning process?
Yeah, it's really about that, right? Thinking about it from a planning perspective. So the best firms that we've partnered with are starting with that, and they're going deeper on the planning side. I love this story that one of our firms shared was that when they are onboarding a new client or a new family, they're asking a lot of the traditional questions. But one question that they also like to ask is, do you anticipate needing to support your aging parents in their long-term care needs financially? Right? I mean, that's a super relevant question to ask. And I don't think a lot of firms are asking that question.
Nope.
And what's happening is then you see the client, their eyes get really big and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I haven't had that conversation with my parents. I don't even know about their financial situation. And so, yeah, probably. Right. And so that's certainly important to factor into that planning. Because that's a huge expense that, otherwise you would have said, okay, let's plan for you and your spouse, but now you got to be planning for, your client's aging parents as well. So again, planning. And then what's really, really important is letting your clients know that yes, we want to talk about these things, right? We have solutions now for you. And so what we've seen too is that once financial firms launch this program, now they start having a lot more of these really deep conversations with their clients. Their clients are coming to them and they're offering up information that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that's really important to the traditional, planning and management process. And I'll give you one story. Is that I had a financial advisor that was telling me, I was talking to a client and they told me that they made a decision to move into senior living, and it's already done. They signed the contracts, and basically it's like, okay, we got to transfer the money, and the financial advisor was like a little bit hurt, like why didn't my client come to me with this, before they made this decision? Shouldn't I have a seat at the table on an important decision like this? Because there are significant financial implications. And I said, yeah, certainly you should have a seat at the table. But why do you think they didn't think to include you in this conversation, right? It's because you're not talking about these things. They aren't naturally thinking aging care decisions are decisions I should bring my financial advisor into, when in fact they do have these serious financial implications. So there should be that conversation.
Absolutely. It's a bit of that look in the mirror moment and saying, oh gosh, things are changing again, going back to how do I bring value? And I think you nailed it. It needs to be, while it might be uncomfortable, it is a conversation up front that you need to be having. Just want to pivot really quick and talk tech, since this is the WealthStack podcast. Just want to talk about, what's the tech backbone of bQuest? How do you ensure ease of use for both the advisor and the families that they're serving?
Yeah, definitely. It's really through a digital platform, right? So when we think about what our mission is, it's to impact millions of families across the country. And if you think about it, it is a very broad geographical situation in that you might have a financial firm that sits in one state, Colorado, for instance. They might have advisors across the country. Those advisors might have clients across the country, and those clients might have family members that need service throughout the country. So we really need to leverage technology to provide, the ability for families everywhere to be able to connect with service providers everywhere, and then for the financial advisor to facilitate these engagements as well. So when we think about it, we have a pro directory that provides information on all these different service providers. Financial firms that partner with us give all their clients access to this digital platform, so they're able to navigate it on their own if they feel comfortable, right? And then also for the financial advisor, we heard time and time again that they want to have the ability to continue to engage with their client in bringing value in this way, but they have to do it really easily, right? And so we provide them with what we call the digital Rolodex. Rolodex is kind of like a dated term, but essentially it allows them to be able to create kind of a favorite list of service providers. And then as they get requests from their clients for specific types of service providers, they can pull from our pro directory, our ecosystem, and make those one-on-one referrals directly to their clients, as well as share information resources from our digital library, which we call the Resource Hub.
And what I think is so interesting is when I initially met you and you were walking me through bQuest and how this all came to be, you've really identified every area where folks might need help, down to folks who can come in and literally renovate your home to make it more livable. So I think it's just incredible that you've carved out this space to be able to have that and create this opportunity for advisors. So I know something that's important to bQuest too, and you've talked before about making the invisible visible, giving advisors insights into issues they might not, otherwise see. Could you maybe share a story or use case where that made a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's kind of what we've talked about thus far of advisors want to know more about their clients, right? They want to engage with multiple generations. I mean, this is something that we've talked about from a business perspective in the financial services industry is this kind of leaky bucket, right? And so they really want to be able to provide this depth of service, because that's the type of people they are, but they also want to find a way to engage with other people in the family, right? So, but it's this having those conversations and leaning in to these life experiences that will give them the opportunity to achieve those goals. And so what we've talked about before is opening up these conversations, letting these clients know that they want to engage in these conversations and that they have these solutions to provide to them, leads to things like I mentioned, where that your client is looking at senior living. And now you have the opportunity to really support them in making that important decision, right? Or it could be, aging in place, right? Having the conversation of, okay, so you are struggling supporting, your spouse in home. Well, let's figure out what we need to do to support you. Now, understanding that bringing in-home care or home renovations, that's going to cost money. And so let's have a proactive conversation around, does that fit into our plan? Or do we need to adjust the plan to support your immediate desires, as well as then talking through what the future looks like also?
And because I love a good roadmap question, I have to ask, what's next for bQuest? Any new partnerships, integrations, or initiatives coming up that advisors should get excited about? I'm pretty sure I just saw some news about partnering with the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers.
Yes, yes. No, we're so excited about our national partnerships. So glad you asked. So, because you mentioned this at the beginning, we aren't just a software provider, right? We're more than just technology. And so an important aspect of what we do is building this ecosystem of aging care and end of life service providers. And so we do that really intentionally, right? I mentioned that we have this 4-step vetting process, which is really, really important, but we need to be able to identify the best of these professional service providers across the country. And so how do we do that in a scalable manner? Well, part of it is identifying these national association partners like NASM, as they go by, as you mentioned. ALCA, Aging Life Care Association, is another one. NPRA, National Placement Referral Alliance, and the Society for Certified Senior Advisors. So all 4 of these are national associations that we've identified are best-in-class organizations. We've gotten to know their leadership team really well. We understand what their code of ethics are. We understand how they manage their certification process, what their training and development looks like. And so essentially, we've entered into a joint partnership to open up our ecosystem to their members. They still have to go through our 4-step vetting process, but essentially allows us to really expand our ecosystem in a very intentional way. So that's super exciting. When you talk about roadmap, I always think about technology as well. So we're really leaning into AI, of course, really around this matchmaking. So what we think about is how do we effectively matchmake a family caregiver looking for a service provider based upon what their personal experience is. And so again, it's all about leveraging technology to make it really easy, a great, user experience of getting them connected to the service provider that can then provide that hands-on care.
Well, it's obvious that you have a very clear vision for bQuest. So I know there'll be more news coming out, I'm sure, very soon. But Lauren, it's actually time for segment 2 of this episode that I call Ask Us Anything. And I've gone out to the social universe and asked folks to submit questions they want answered by you. And we certainly had a few folks slide into the DMs this week, as this was a pretty hot topic. So if you're ready for the hot seat, I'm going to throw a couple questions at you from our audience.
Bring it on. I love it.
All right. One gentleman asked, I'm finding that a lot of clients don't want to admit that they need help with aging issues until it's almost too late. Any tips for bringing up elder care planning without it feeling awkward or intrusive?
Gosh, that is a hard one. And I found that it's a generational thing, right? So if your client is the older adult, right? Oftentimes that generation does not want to really talk about these experiences. And so oftentimes it's the adult children that are more eager about, let's have this conversation. Let's think proactively about it. Right. So what I found is helpful. I mean, certainly, asking your traditional planning questions. I think also helping them to understand what this journey looks like. A lot of times it's hard to say, well, what do I want my aging care wishes to be when I don't even know what that's going to look like, right? So that's where our education and insights come in, when we try to provide information, to the client, to the financial advisor and client services team around a lot of different topics that are related to these stages that I mentioned, starting with aging in place, moving to home transition and beyond. So sometimes it's just providing information that allows them to start thinking through it, right? They need to think through it. They need to digest it before then they're willing to start having this proactive conversation. Something that we do offer on our care coordination platform is, as I mentioned, this digital library. It's a resource hub, and it has a lot of different pieces of information with different media formats. And so essentially these clients can access this on their own time, right? Their own experience. They're not having to share it with anyone else, and they can start selecting topics that they think are interesting or relevant to what they're dealing with. And so again, it just gets them starting to think about it. And then at some point, once they have a better understanding of where they are and where they will likely go, then they'll be in a position to feel more comfortable talking about it.
So hit up the bQuest resource library. Got it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. One more question for you. And I know you just touched on it in the context of bQuest, but on a grander scale, what role do you think AI will play in the future of aging and caregiving? Will we see advisors lean on AI tools to surface care needs or even suggest solutions, you think?
Yeah, I think it will definitely make it easier, right? The thing I struggle with is that, as we know with AI, it all comes down to prompts, right? You have to be able to at least know what those prompts should be. And I find a lot of times family caregivers and advisors don't know enough about this experience to be able to effectively prompt AI so that they can get to the results that they need. And so that's why we are planning on utilizing AI to facilitate this. But it is a good thought, and we want to make it easier. I'll give you an example. When you're selecting a service provider as a family caregiver, right? You want to know, okay, what questions should I ask? And then specifically, what credentials should I be looking for, right? I mean, I'm right now hiring a home care provider to come into my mom's home. And, that's kind of scary. I'm inviting a stranger into my mom's home. I won't be there to observe the engagement. And so you really want to know, well, what licensing, what certifications, how do I know that I can trust this organization and their caregivers to come into my mom's home? So I think that is the sticking point with AI relative to this, is knowing the right prompts or the right questions to be asking.
I think that's a great point. Lauren, I appreciate you being put on the spot and your insightful answers, but we have come to our final and my favorite segment that I call Stack It or Whack It. So just be warned, I'm going to throw out a few technologies. They're not always well tech related, especially if I know you. Sometimes it's just random thoughts, and you tell me if they are worth the hype. So stack it, or if you should lose it, not worth it. And that's a whack it. So first one I have for you: companion robots for elder care, Jetsons vibes or the future of home care giving, stack or whack?
Definitely stack. I love this. I think leaning into technology, I mean, certainly we can always go too far, right? But there are a number of really important needs that families have to age in place, to stay in their homes as long as possible. Isolation is actually a really big problem, right? Isolation, socialization. I think that can help. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to be talking to a robot, right? It can really make it easier for you to engage with your loved ones through other forms of technology. Another big one is medicine management, right? And that's something that those technologies can help with, to make sure, reminders on making sure that you're taking the medicines when you need to be taking them. And then, monitoring. Falls are a really important aspect. And so the ability to know that if my mom falls in her home, that we're going to know about it. She's not going to be there for long. That is certainly peace of mind to a family caregiver. So definitely, stack it. I think it's great. We just got to be careful how far we take it.
Love it. Great answer. And last one, like I said, because I know you, got to talk tech and tennis. So stack or whack when it comes to smart rackets, that track your swing speed, spin, shot placement. Is that helpful for improving your game, or just another excuse to overanalyze your backhand?
Yes, both. I'm going to call this a stack it, because I love this. I love analytics. I love information. Sometimes I do take it too far, but no, I love it. In fact, I didn't even know that this existed, Shannon. So I'm going to go shopping, certainly, because I think this would be really fun to at least try out. I don't have a ton of time to be over analyzing my backhand right now. With two young kids and obviously a growing business, but I love this idea and definitely want to go check it out.
Well, I definitely don't want to play you then this summer if we get the chance, because that's bare minimum over here. But Lauren, this has just been a great conversation and a heartfelt one at that. So really appreciate it. Helping clients age with dignity is a responsibility and truly an opportunity. Advisors that just really can no longer ignore it. So please tell listeners where they can learn more about you and what you're working on at bQuest.
Yeah, I welcome, any conversations, right, for people that want to learn more about what we're doing and how we're partnering with financial firms. So you can reach me at Lauren at the bQuest, so THEBQUEST.com. You can go to our website, which is thebequest.com. Also, I'm so excited. I'm going to be in Boca Raton with Shannon in June. I'm going to be on a panel, I think on that Wednesday, what is the 11th of June. And so I love meeting people in person. And so just really excited to attend the conference and look forward to meeting a lot of people there as well.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was totally going to give it the shout out. So, so thank you for that. We're very much looking forward to having you at Wealth Management Edge. And be sure to like and subscribe to the WealthStack podcast on all major podcasting platforms and follow all things WealthStack on wealthmanagement.com, LinkedIn, and X. And like Lauren said, if you want the in-person WealthStack experience, join us June 10th through 12th at the Boca Raton Resort in Florida for Wealth Management Edge. And thank you all for tuning in. Starting your own RIA? Betterment Advisor Solutions is the modern custodian built to support you from day one. With intuitive tech, portfolio management, and streamlined client onboarding, we make it easy to launch with confidence. Learn more at betterment.com/advisors. That's betterment.com/advisors. Grow your RIA your way. Investing involves risk, performance not guaranteed.